The British Prime Minister Tony Blair meets Gerry Adams at the Stormont Talks in Belfast. Diana formally begins her presidential campaign denying she's the moral issues candidate. And Ireland to play Belgium for a place in next year's World Cup finals. Hello and welcome to 6-1. Also on this evening's programme, more on today's meeting between Tony Blair and Sinn Féin. We'll be talking to the Sinn Féin leader, Gerry Adams.
Singer-songwriter John Denver is confirmed dead after his light plane crashes into the Pacific. And an English soccer fan is banned from Ireland for life after his role in the Lansdowne Road riot. But first, the British Prime Minister Tony Blair met the Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams for the first time face-to-face today. Their meeting at the Stormont Talks in Belfast was the first between a British Prime Minister and a leader of Sinn Féin since the IRA ceasefire. Mr Blair, who also met the leaders of the other parties in the Stormont Talks, said the very fact of his visit was an indication that he thought genuine progress was being made. Gerry Adams said he hoped Mr Blair would be the last British Prime Minister with jurisdiction in Northern Ireland. Later, Mr Blair was jeered and heckled by Unionists on a walkabout in East Belfast. This evening, as he visited a shopping centre in the Loyalist East area of the city, the British Prime Minister was given a hostile reception. He'd had to cut short a planned walkabout. Earlier, however, at the start of his visit, he was given a rather warmer welcome in Derry.
There were plenty of hands to shake as Tony Blair arrived in Derry this morning, accompanied by John Hume. The SDLP leader showed him the American-owned Seagate technology plant, where both men had a private meeting. They discussed the peace process, and Mr Hume also pressed the British Prime Minister on the need for a new inquiry into the Bloody Sunday killings in the city 25 years ago.
Well, I told him that it was a very major and traumatic issue in this part of the world, and the families were deeply concerned, as was the whole community, and that, of course, we wanted the truth to fully emerge, and that it was a matter of deep concern, and that naturally I would hope that they would be bringing in a new inquiry.
I mean, this is a matter that is under consideration. The evidence that's been submitted to us is under consideration by government departments, and I won't comment in advance of us making a decision upon it.
During a lunchtime meeting in Craigavon, Mr Blair spoke of more recent deaths. The two RUC men shot dead in Lurgan weeks before the IRA ceasefire. He said the government was looking at ways to commemorate victims of violence, a move welcomed by the Ulster Unionist leader David Trimble.
I think it's entirely appropriate that that should be in his mind at this time.
As the Prime Minister left, an independent councillor, Brendan McKenna, attempted to give him a letter protesting about the British government's handling of the controversial Orange March in Portadown last July, but police and bodyguards prevented him from doing so.
This is a letter concerning the events that Gavahi Road this year. If Tony Blair and Mo Mullins think and believe that the Gavahi Road issue is going to go away, that they can brush us to one side and they can sweep the whole issue under the carpet, they're going to be seriously mistaken.
On Mr Blair's final engagement in East Belfast, he was heckled by a crowd of loyalists angered at his handshake with Gerry Adams.
Historic and symbolic were once again the buzzwords at Stormont as Tony Blair arrived for the first meeting of a British Prime Minister and a leading Sinn Féin member since Lloyd George met Michael Collins back in 1921. Mr Blair spent 2 hours meeting each of the parties separately, but it was the behind-doors handshake with Gerry Adams and the 15 minutes of discussions which overshadowed everything.
Made it absolutely clear that we wanted them in this talks process. It had to be on the basis, however, of a genuine commitment to non-violent and democratic means, and I stressed also the importance to us of the principle of consent. In other words, that it is the will of the people here that must be paramount in determining the future. And I think it's tremendously important to recognize all the way through that all those parties that are in this talks process are here, and here only on the basis that they accept the Mitchell principles, that they accept the principles of non-violence, and that they're taking the path of democracy, not the party of the gun.
Both sides described the meeting as positive and constructive. Gerry Adams confirmed the much talked about handshake did take place, and he put forward his party's view.
He listened very intently to what we had to say, I think he does recognise and has publicly acknowledged the need for change in this situation. We, of course, want to see the maximum change. We want to see Irish unity. We want him to be the Prime Minister who helps to bring that about. And indeed, as I said to him, we want him to be the last British Prime Minister with jurisdiction in Ireland.
The Ulster Unionist Party viewed the meeting as being premature.
I feel rather sorry for him that he's found himself in a position where he feels this to be necessary or something that he has to go through. And it's not, if we were in his position, we would have taken care not to fraternise with the enemy. I'm not suggesting that he's doing that in terms of the meeting. I think indeed he'll be taking this opportunity to underline to Sinn Féin the fact that this process is based upon peaceful means and the consent principle and the democratic process.
The SDLP was greatly encouraged by Mr Blair's visit.
We expressed to him our very deep appreciation of the priority that he and his government have given to our problem and of the attention that he's giving to it and the energy that they're committing to working together with the parties here to promote agreement.
Away from Stormont, the Reverend Ian Paisley thought differently.
From the graves of Ulster's honoured dead who gave their todays for Ulster's tomorrows, and from the hearts of the bereaved, there is an agonised shriek of repugnance for what he's doing.
So yet another piece of the jigsaw puzzle has been put into place. A British Prime Minister has met the leader of Sinn Féin. But Mr Blair was careful to stress that goodwill is needed on all sides if these talks are to succeed. If the goodwill goes, so too will any hope of a lasting settlement.
At the launch of her